Jeff Wilson started covering the Texas Rangers in 2008, though he'll never forget 2021. Out on his own, he decided it was time to do a podcast, but his wheels were spinning until a nerd came along. There's no going back now. Welcome to the Texas Rangers Baseball Podcast. Here's your host, Jeff Wilson, and the recliner nerd himself, John Moore.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Texas Rangers Baseball Podcast. This is episode 33, and today, Dave Raymond, the Texas Rangers play-by-play TV analyst, is going to be joining us. But first, Jeff and I, we got to get into the team. Jeff, how's your week been so far?
It's been busy. I can't believe it's already Wednesday.
I know, no kidding. We were there Monday night for that. Got out kind of late. How late were you there last night? I didn't go last night.
I don't remember. I think I was home by 12:15. So I think I left the ballpark before midnight. So that's always a victory.
This guy's working the whole time, guys. I'm trying to get videos down and doing stuff, but he's typing and going. I learned that from spring training. When I would get up to get my coffee, we shared a home that we rented for spring training, and he was going when I got up, and by the time I was going to bed, he was still writing. So, hey, let me tell you what. Rangers Today is worth it. The guy's putting out something every day, so this is.
I agree.
You agree, and you're running. Tell them the special you're running right now.
Well, right now we decided to do a 6-month subscription for $35, and basically 6 months is the span
season.
of a baseball season.
Exactly.
So if you don't care about anything except for opening day to the last game of the season till 162, then that might be the right subscription for you guys. But $5.99 a month, $60 a year, and now $35 for 6 months, and so you get a little price break if you don't want to do the full.
Hey, but it's worth to stay the full season. We're going to go all week. Look, we both have vacations we might take in the off season or do whatever. But I'm telling you, we went all off season up when we started this thing.
Yeah.
Maybe one week we missed in the whole time that we started.
Well,
I
think right around Christmas.
We have.
But we taped one ahead. So even then, I think it was the week after Christmas was the only one we haven't done. So as far as the podcasts go, and then starting January 2nd, I've written every day. Every day. So
and stuff posted.
My wife told me I got to take a day off this week, so we'll see what happens.
We have to get someone to fill in. Okay, look, the Rangers are 6-11. Yeah. They've won 4 out of the first 6, 4 out of the last 6 games. Obviously, when we came on here and did the first in-studio episode, we talked about how they were obviously tanking, trying to get the. Right. So it's obvious now. This is actually a World Series contender. They're going to run away with the West. Probably got 2 or 3 Cy Young candidates going into it, but in all honesty, pretty good week. Pretty good road trip.
Yeah, if you go on the road and you come back better than you were, then clearly that's a good road trip. They split, and really I think that's all you can ask on a road trip, being realistic. But it seemed like the momentum kind of carried into Monday. They played a really good game Monday. They didn't play very well Tuesday night, but they're playing a really good team. The Astros, they got the Braves coming, so. It's a good week to kind of figure out where they are, and you're starting to see the starting pitching get stretched out a little bit.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Which is important. Saves the bullpen a little bit. The hitters are still searching a little bit, I think, but I think that's kind of a baseball wide thing. You look across the board. I noticed
guys aren't hitting home runs. Even the Astros lineup last night. The big video board at the ballpark. They list the averages, and it's like. 185, 212.
A lot of below 200
on both sides.
Yeah.
So I think the bats are still trying to catch up.
Well, and that first week, what everyone talked about, of course, it's all Chris Young and JD's fault. They won't go get pitching. Let's look at what the pitchers did this last week. Your last 5 starts, starting yesterday with Hearn, who, by the way, wasn't his best. Still went 5 innings, only gave up 4 runs. You go back to Dunning, who went 5 2/3 innings, only gave up 2 runs. They had that opener day with Richards and Howard. Out of your 2 openers that went in, they gave you 4 innings, only 2 earned runs. Perez was the star of the week, 6 innings, no earned runs. And then you got Otto, who talk about stepping up, who had 5 innings and 1 earned run. He's going to get another start.
Right.
Look, at this point of the season and where we're at, technically maybe like first week out of spring training, about where opening season is, you're not going to go much more than 5 innings anyway. That's a great week.
It's a good week. Well, it's a great week considering where they had been. And,
exactly.
And the Oakland A's probably had a little something to do with that. But you got to beat those teams too. And but you get stretched out. You have some success. It feels good. It doesn't. These are major league players. Anytime you get them out, it feels good. I think that what you just read off, the concern is with Taylor Hearn, who's on our backdrop today, and he. the velo wasn't there last night, and it's been hit or miss. And one thing that I know that afterward all the coaches and a couple of the executives talked about was they compared him to what they're seeing now compares to what they saw in 2020 with Mike Minor, coming out of that summer training camp 2.0. Was only 3 weeks.
Right.
Minor comes out and he has dead arm. His velocity's off and a little shoulder fatigue. Taylor says he feels fine, and that's fine, but every pitcher goes through dead arm, but it's usually in spring training.
Right.
And so the Rangers are wondering right now if he's going through dead arm, and they don't go on the DL because of it. They just have to work through it.
Right.
And so that might be where he's at, but it's not like he's a seasoned veteran. He was a starter for maybe half the season last year, so
Sure.
It's a small sample size. They liked what they saw when he is out attacking and pumping mid-90s in the very first inning.
Yeah.
That's when he's his best, obviously. And so they want to see that he has to show them something.
Right.
They have options, and if this is the season where you have to earn it, where you're not given anything, Taylor Hearn might be the first example of a guy who needs to earn it. And again, the Seattle start was terrible. The home opener, he gave up a bunch of hits, but only 1 run. But still, it just seems like it's not clicking yet. And again, maybe it's the dead arm, maybe it's just a first month thing, but they're watching it.
Yeah, and it's not what we expect from Taylor. It's not what we saw at his best last year from Taylor.
Right.
I do like the fact he ended up going 5 innings for your bullpen. That's fantastic that he went through that. He obviously wasn't his best last night. But let's talk about also the lineup. And look, Seager and Semien, for what they've done, have not been the Seager and Semien that the Rangers wanted when they signed them. I'm not panicking. Most people aren't panicking. The lineup is still producing runs no matter what. Having those two in the lineup, they changed something up the other night when you and I were there. They put Adolis Garcia second.
Right.
I liked it. It produced that night.
It did.
It was just a shakeup, I think. Lefty, righty, lefty, or what was the reasoning?
Yeah, well, Framber Valdez pitched for Houston, a left-hander, and the Rangers liked the matchup. But also, Adolis is when he's at his best, he's aggressive in the strike zone,
right,
and putting pressure on hitters. And so the thinking was, especially after scoring 2 runs in 18 innings there to close out the Seattle series, or I'm sorry, the Oakland series, that those 3 might kind of invigorate the lineup, kind of set a tone. And it ended up not working early in the game against Valdez, but it sure worked out late. Garcia, he homered last night.
Yeah.
The guy, when he's right, is can do a lot of damage. But to the earlier point here of a couple minutes ago, I'm not sure anybody's just right. Nate Lowe is hitting 365, let's say 370.
Hasn't had the power
right,
surge,
but he hasn't had the pop, and he talked about that yesterday. So these guys are and with the ball, there's a couple stories out that the ball has been changed this year. Pitchers are ahead with their analytics.
Right.
They're always ahead early in the season anyway. It's kind of a baseball wide scoring dearth, I guess. And I think Marcus Semien hit a ball last night that I'm sure he thought would have gone out.
Yes.
And Marcus, keep in mind where he played last year. He played in a 2 minor league ballparks, and then very hitter friendly Rogers Center. So that might have opened his eyes a little bit. But it's a baseball wide thing. It's not specific to the Rangers,
right?
But it's something that needs to get better, and it will as they get more at bats and see more pitches. It'll get better.
Well, and I think if anybody looks at the lineup and looks at last year's lineup compared to this one, I'll tell you this. And last night, as the guy that sat at home and watched it on the TV, you're watching the lineup, and no matter what the situation, whoever was coming to the plate, you thought, okay, this might be where something could get started. You felt confident throughout the lineup. This is a guy that's capable of getting something started and going. There were a lot of times last year, down 3 or 4 runs, going late in the innings. You were kind of looking at the clock, going, okay, if it's 3 up, 3 down, we'll get in the locker room pretty quick and get in the clubhouse and go. This team right here seems like they're capable all the time of doing, and they made a late little push there too. They tried, they didn't get anything across, but it's fun to watch a lineup where you actually have a little confidence that, hey, something could get rolling here, no matter what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's definitely a more talented lineup. There's no question about it. There's more potential there, and through 17 games, the offense has been a strength. I guess if you're going to break down the team, the offense has been okay to very good in some games. So I don't think there's a lot of concern there. You got Mitch Garver who's struggling. That's probably the biggest concern right now.
Yeah.
It looks like Garcia and Simeon are starting to get untracked, I guess. Corey Seager is just a great hitter. I mean, if 240 is his bad month, then the Rangers are going to be in pretty good shape there. But Lowe has taken the step forward. I think that's kind of the key to the offense. They needed to see certain guys improve internally, and Lowe was one of them. And I think he has a better understanding of who he is after last season.
Right.
Made some adjustments, he's a smart hitter. He makes adjustments from pitcher to pitcher, and we talked about that yesterday with him and Chris Woodward. I mean, this is a cerebral guy who isn't afraid to hit against lefties. He will hit the ball the other way, which
He's done a lot.
Really affects shifts on him. So this is a good development. Again, he had last year his first 5 games. I think he had like the second most RBIs in MLB history for a guy in 5 games. It was something huge. So he started fast last year. He's starting fast this year. Can he sustain it this year? And so that's the goal, I think. But it looks like the foundation's in place.
Yeah, and absolutely. And if he stays, look, he's not obviously probably not going to hit over 350, I don't think. I think eventually it comes down to earth. If he stays anywhere around 300 for the season, few bombs in there. You'd like to see him get up close to 20, something like that. If he doesn't, as long as he's putting up the OPS, getting on base, and what he's doing, maybe first base isn't an offseason thing they're really worried about. This season, they were looking at options for first base. Yeah. If he continues with what he's doing, everybody's saying they still needed to see what this guy was doing. Rangers were patient. They're seeing, hey, it's his to lose. If he stays with what he's doing now or even close to it or stays around 300, I don't think you're looking offseason. You're going to be looking for an outfield bat. You're going to make sure Young's going to be ready to go at third base. And then obviously starting pitching if you haven't figured out where you're at. I'm already talking next year. That's crazy I'm doing that. But this team's not a playoff team. I mean, they're a lot better team. They're not a playoff team. But, man, there's some fun things to see. And there's guys on this team, and I'll say a name, Willie Calhoun, that at the All-Star break I'm going to be interested to see if they're not doing what there's players that could come up and do things. Yeah. You're on Tavares bandwagon, so am I. He needs to be up here, I think. He could be in this lineup.
Yeah.
Because I think Miller easily slides over to third for platoon there. You could put Tavares in center, move Adolis over to left. But Cole Calhoun's another name. He's not hitting like, the $5 million he signed for.
Yeah.
He's not putting up the numbers you want. He is a good at bat. I mean, he works counts. But, no production. And Woody has said – you have to earn your spot on this team. He's going to play the players that are hitting, that are doing it.
Yeah, I did a Q&A with Chris Young for the website, and I really kind of hit him on the when are you going to start calling guys up thing, and he's big on player development in the minor league. So I don't think anything is imminent.
Sure.
On that front, even with Tavares, who is still hitting, I think around 350 or 360 at AAA, had a big double last night to help start a rally. These guys have to show it in the minor leagues too, and I think he's at probably 70 at bats, 75 at bats. So maybe he gets to 200 end of May. I was thinking early May.
Right.
I kind of got shut down there by the GM, and that's fine. But
unless an injury happens.
Yeah, right. Because he does have the 40-man. But I'd say by the end of May, it's a real serious look. If he has, let's say 200 at bats, and it continues like this, he might force their hand. So, but. Yeah, guys.
Did you see who played center field in AAA last night?
Well, Josh Smith.
Yeah.
And his bats coming along too, but
not on the 40-man.
Right. But I think you talking about next year and us kind of looking at next year. This is still a development year.
Sure.
And this should not surprise anybody at this point.
They said it was.
The Rangers have said that, and they've said it since October 4th. The day after the last season ended. I know they spent all that money, but this is still a development year. And Nate Lowe is a guy. Adolis Garcia is a guy. I know Adolis Garcia had 31 home runs or whatever last year and was an all-star, but his second half raised some questions.
Absolutely.
So there are guys that have to produce and things that you have to see and things that the Rangers set out to see. That's why they didn't maybe go get Matt Olson or spend a ton of money on, let's say, Freddie Freeman, but just as an example, a first baseman, because they think Nate Lowe can potentially do that and be a cost-effective guy for 4 or 5 more years and take that money and put it into a left fielder or starting pitcher or something to that effect. So it's all part of this giant interwoven baseball plan that every team sets out. It's not just a 1-year thing. Chris Young said it's a 10-year thing. They want to be great for 10 years, and not rushing prospects is part of that, but so is developing guys that you need to help keep the budget down so you can afford another Marcus Semien or Corey Seager or get into the mix for like a Max Scherzer at some point, something to that effect when you're playing at the top of the market for big,
even if it's a year or two and you can go get a big
dollars.
Guy. Yeah. Well, and they are so poised for really some good stuff in the next year or so. You and I've talked all the time about how minor league system is currency. It's that extra currency you have. And I know people, I see it on Twitter all the time, these people that get on there about, well, this isn't fair, there's this logjam. That's a great thing to have, as a logjam. You can't understand what depth means. To have depth there, look, you're one injury away from one of these guys having to come up, and if you've got all that depth or you've traded it away, but man, when the time comes and you're at the All-Star break, or you're going to not the All-Star break, you're coming up to the trade deadline, and you're a reliever and a starting pitcher away, and you're already up at the top of the West or whatever, you've got the players to go get it, and you may not even have to go to the top of your prospect to go. If your system's deep, you have the currency to go get. That's how they did it with the Cliff Lee thing when they traded Cliff Lee.
Cole Hamels too.
Cole Hamels too. And don't be surprised this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they made a move. It would be a long-term move. They're not going to go get somebody that's going to be here a year and a half.
Right.
I think it would be a bigger deal than that, or unless they feel it's somebody they could extend. Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're playing at that.
There are 2 currencies in baseball: money and minor leaguers. And part of the reason you get so many minor leaguers is to trade them. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Right.
So, but we still have 145 games to go this season, and a guy who's going to watch pretty much all of them is going to be joining us here in just a second. Dave Raymond. So let's let our gums stop flapping and let's bring in Dave.
One more thing before we get to Dave, and we'll end it with Dave on that. I want to ask your opinion on this. Monday's May 1st. May 2nd, they've got to trim the roster. Who's got to be looking? Who do you think? Who do you think's going to go down? Do you have any ideas who you think might be? Look, there's guys that can be optioned. Obviously, that's going to help. But is there anybody that should prepare to either go down to Round Rock or maybe look for a job?
Well, if you have options, I mean, I think that's always the first move. If the Rangers don't want to DFA anybody, so they look at the guys with options. You know who they are. Yeah, I don't know that. And a lot of times these guys don't deserve to get sent down, but it happens. No. And
but you can only have 26 next Tuesday.
And you can keep an extra pitcher, so you can keep a 14th pitcher now.
That means a position player might be one of that 10.
I mean, it could get a little unfair, but a 40-man roster spot is a blessing and a curse sometimes.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, let's get Dave in here.
Okay, guys, Dave Raymond's coming. He's the TV play-by-play guy for the Texas Rangers. Dave's coming right up. All right, and joining us now is the Texas Rangers play-by-play TV analyst. Most of you know this face, and he was begging to come on here. We finally allowed it. He's been bugging us for about a month now, but we finally got him on here. Yeah. It's Dave Raymond. Dave, thanks so much for coming on, bud.
Well, my pleasure. It's great to be here.
Watch out for the labyrinth of here.
Yep.
No, the nice part is you don't. There's no makeup unless there's a trick being played here.
I put a little on, just to let you know. But
Jeff's a little pasty. We got to get some color.
All right.
There. Yeah, it's good. It's good. So thanks for coming. It's great. This is our third show with the studio.
Right.
John Daniels, Chase Lee, who came from Frisco on a game day.
Whoa.
Yeah, and now Dave Raymond, who came from Flower Mound on a game day. So
it's on the way. I mean,
it's just a little
kind of on the way to work. So
you had to get to Tarrant County. So you're in Tarrant County and everything's good. Speaking of good, or maybe not so good, what's your take been on these first 17 Texas Rangers games of the 2022 campaign?
Yeah. I'm a little surprised that it hasn't gone just a tad better.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know where you guys come down on this. And by better, I mean, I guess specifically looking at wins and losses.
Sure.
But I haven't been, like disappointed per se either. So I kind of caught in the middle right now. I feel like this team can and will play a lot better than they have.
Yeah.
So I guess, like as a parent, you'd be, well, I'm a little disappointed in you. But it's such a long daggum season. You know that they'll get into a little bit of a role. And it's just funny because as we're doing this here today, and we're looking forward to Glenn Otto's second start, right? And the first one, to me, is a real inflection point for these first couple weeks of the season. To me, that was where, the night before there was the big win in Seattle to salvage a win in that series. And they did it in, good comeback fashion, great, exciting moments toward the end. And so you felt like, okay, maybe this is something. It isn't anything until you win the next day, though,
Exactly.
And then Otto comes in, and it wasn't just the winning, but it was just a real sort of confident, great game on the mound, which we just hadn't seen.
Exactly.
And it just kind of took some of the pressure off, I think, and I think everybody kind of relaxed. So it ended up being a good series, and then won the first one against Houston. So starting to feel better. But I think they're going to be fine. I think that the dice are loaded, right, is the way I look at it. Right. They went out, they did the work in the offseason. They've got the guys in place, I think, who can win. And so now it's just a matter of, I think, still a little bit of sorting out and some of the pitching coming together, and I think they'll be fine. I mean, they're not going to win a World Series this year, probably, but I think they'll be pretty good.
I think the thing that it's taken me I'm not surprised about, but like every day I show up to a game or turn on the game, it's like, oh, the Rangers could win.
Yeah,
the Rangers could win tonight.
Yeah.
Whereas definitely the end of 20 and all of last year, or really the end of last year after the trade deadline, is like, these guys have no chance.
Yep.
It will take a miracle for them to win this game.
Yeah.
And so, if people see these signings, they're like, oh, well, they should win the World Series. Like, no, not when you lose 102 games,
Yeah.
And
it's not a 50.
It's, but I mean, I think you feel the same way. Like, okay, these guys can win.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think they absolutely can. Historically speaking, very difficult to go from 100 losses to, meaningfully relevant the next year. I think you're talking about, 25 to 30 win improvement is kind of historical.
Right.
You just don't do that.
Right.
So at the same time, no team in history had ever spent $561 million
after losing 102 games.
Ever. Like, forget it.
Ever.
After winning any number of games or losing any number. It just had never happened. So, they put their money where their mouth was, right? I mean, all season last year, they kept saying, like, oh, we're going to be active in the free agent market. Oh, okay. Well, what does that even mean?
Yeah, we all rolled our eyes at that.
They were really active after the 20 season, but it was Kohei Arihara.
Yeah. So then, they made dramatic improvements, and it'll show up. There's still some pitching stuff that needs to be done, but it's coming along quickly.
But I think you would agree with this. The way I felt about it, especially from 2020 through the end of last year, any game, even if they're behind, you're starting to think anybody coming up in the lineup, you're like, this guy could start something. You never felt like, okay, well, they're down 3. This is, what time's the clock going to tick out? I made that point earlier because we're just ready to get to the end of the game. You really feel like the Rangers, if as long as it's not an 8-run lead, if they're anywhere 4 or 5 below, there's a chance someone in this lineup can spark something. Last night, late, they started to try to get something together there. Everyone's putting together better at bat. It's a different lineup. It's just a much better lineup.
It's a much better lineup. And, you take the guys who performed well last year, and again, sometimes we lose perspective, I think, because we're in the middle of it every day. But when you go back and think about a 102-loss season and just how that thing played out last year, how difficult that was on everybody, that Adolis Garcia posted 31 homers and 90 RBIs in that, especially as the season wears on, big pieces of the lineup are being lost via trade, that kind of thing. Pretty amazing. And so now what you're asking of Adolis Garcia this season is so much different. Yeah. And I think it will serve him well. I hope it does. I really hope it does. That what we saw last year is the type of thing that can be repeated. I think the coaching and the style that they're trying to employ this year is also advantageous to anybody in this lineup. So I think you'll see the big jumps. Not big jumps. I don't think you can see a big jump from Adolis Garcia, but if you can see that consistently from Adolis, that's huge.
Yep.
And then Nathaniel Lowe, I feel like we've seen real improvement over last year, and last year was a good year.
Right.
So, boy, those types of things are terribly encouraging. And the fact that we are where we are now, 17 games in, and Seager, Simeon, and Mitch Garver just really have not contributed offensively. Yeah. That's the type of thing that you're finding the silver lining, I guess. But, man, you can imagine this team getting just a little bit hot offensively.
Sure.
Yeah. They're going to pound lumps on people.
Yeah, sure. The Garver's the one I think that he wasn't a signee, free agent signing. He was a trade acquisition, but still, the traded a very popular player to get him and to upgrade a position that the Rangers just, after the Pudge years, have been historically miserable. To your point, if he gets going in the middle of that lineup, and it can take pressure off of Nathaniel Lowe and Adolis Garcia, I mean, that was kind of the domino effect of signing those guys and getting those guys, was to give Adolis and Nathaniel a chance to breathe a little bit and just kind of be who they are, or even figure out who they are. And I think Nathaniel's definitely doing that. I think Adolis is stuck in the middle with some coaching things, but it's working for Nathaniel.
And the other thing we haven't even mentioned, like Nick Solak,
right?
Boy, again, when you're putting a guy in a position, more platoon now, facing not exclusively lefties but primarily lefties,
right?
And limiting whatever defensive exposure you feel like is a part of that equation. Sometimes in left, sometimes DH, whatever. I mean, it just makes such a big difference for a guy to know and simplify the task on a daily basis. Because, good Lord, this game is complex and demanding, So, and, I think I tend to look at it from the perspective of the guys who were there. And maybe it's because they've all shown such big improvements and have been the ones contributing primarily to the offensive load so far. Mm-hmm. But I would have to say, I don't know what Marcus Simeon's bat's going to look like in this lineup, in this ballpark, et cetera. Because we just haven't seen a lot of it yet.
Right.
And even Seager, he's staying afloat, but that he no doubt feels something right now too. Like, he expects to do better. He wants to do better. And he's waiting for that stuff to kind of fall into place for him. But Lord knows, man, there's some guys that could get going here, and this thing could get pretty interesting.
Yeah, and Solak, what I found about Solak, because Jeff and I talked about this for the season, that was a guy that I thought was kind of on the bubble. Didn't even know if he'd make the team. There were so many new things coming in. And what I love about Solak, he earned his way in spring training onto this team, and he is producing. And, even where, Woody is an analytics guy, but Woody will go field. So, Jeff and I talked about that, where he took Solak and put him against a right-hander after he had that great first game.
Yeah.
He went ahead and played him. Woody likes to ride the hot hand and do that. So, Solak's been impressive to me. And when you look at the bottom of the lineup, Willie Calhoun's batting 8th or 9th, a guy that was leading off a lot last year.
Sure.
I mean, this is an improved lineup. Pitching, like you said, that's what's got to come together. And the last 5, what you got from the starting position, even in the game where they had the opener, you've gotten some good pitching the last 5 starts. John Gray's coming back to fill that spot. I mean, look, if they can hold you in a game, this team can be in any game. If you can hold that starting position, the starting pitcher can go 4, 5, 6. You want them to go 5 or 6, and that's where they're getting to now. That was impressive.
Well, that was the deal with these Rangers teams in 08, 09, and 10. And even 11, the really good teams, is like, if the starter can get you 5 and keep you in it, or get you 6, they're going to score enough runs. So I don't know if that's the formula that these Rangers want for winning games, but it could be a formula. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't. You don't have to have one formula to win a game. Like those, you know, that 08 team, which second and was still below 500, and like 30 games behind the Angels or whatever.
Right.
You know, you had Michael Young, Ian Kinsler, Josh Hamilton's first year, Milton Bradley before he really lost it and became a felon and went to prison. You know, you had, I mean, that team scored a ton of runs, and then it just slowly got better as the pitching got better. You know, and I think that's kind of where they're at now. If I was gonna, I think I drew a parallel at something I've done here in the last month or so to that team, because next year could be the year where they, like the 2009 Rangers went 87 and 75, and we're in it until the last week, and then 2010 and 11 is when they took off and went to the World Series. But we're just kind of waiting for the pitching, or waiting to decide if they need to go spin on the right guy.
Right.
So I think
there's development still happening at starting pitching. You've got to assess, and they told that. And that's where the fans, I think, come up short after you spend $500 and something million, and they're thinking we need to go sign pitching. Well, we may have pitching. That's what the Rangers are saying. We've got to see and they're at the upper level. You got AA and AAA guys that could be part of this rotation next year. Mm-hmm. You've got to see if they're going to be a part. You find out they may not, you will go sign some free. They're going to spend on pitching this winter, I believe. Sure. If they need to, they will. And plus, we haven't seen Hernandez or Leclerc, who are due back at this bullpen. So a lot's going to change there too.
Yeah. Well, they're going to. I mean, I also feel like, and you might have a better feel for this than I do, because Chris Young hasn't told me directly exactly what they did and didn't do in the offseason, but I have a strong sense that their plan wasn't just to dump all that money at the beginning, get John Gray and a bunch of bats, but that they were hoping that they would be able to add some more pitching, maybe at the back, you know, coming out of the CBA
negotiation.
But I think they just, you know, a couple of them didn't hit, you know, it just didn't work.
Yep.
And then they were left like, okay, well, let's see what we can do with what we have. And I think that's where we are. You know, they've got a lot of depth too, as you guys know, especially positionally up the middle, and more than they're going to need for the next 7 to 10 years.
Right.
And so those guys represent fundamentally some currency that they have then to go out in the market and make a deal even this year. No doubt. I think there's more pitching coming, but I also, I do think you don't want to get too far ahead on that, because I for the first time in, I don't know, 50 years, it seems like there might really be some high-level talent percolating in the minor league.
Absolutely.
It's just, it's irresponsible to not at least give it a chance.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, because you look at the A's teams, and, you know, with Mulder and Zito and Hudson, I mean, that's the dream right there. And,
sure.
For any team, not just a low market, low rent ballpark Oakland A's team. That's for any team.
Absolutely.
And so, and it makes you so much healthier long term and financially. And anyway, so before we, I guess we can finish talking about baseball, because I have some questions for you about just being back in the ballpark on the road.
Oh yeah.
What were the last 2 seasons like for you? And then CJ and Tom, and you know.
Yeah. It was crazy, right? I mean, it was not. You want to be careful the way you position it, because it was a tough time for everybody, right? I mean, there were people dealing with a whole lot worse than any of us were dealing with.
Excuse me.
You know, our experiences, we tend to talk about them professionally and what a challenge this was or that was. Okay, well, you know, Crimea River. You had a job, number one. And number two, again, our little fantasy land of our work, working in baseball, please.
Yeah.
So now, it wasn't ideal, right? It was definitely not ideal. And for me personally, so it was a little bit, I think it's a little bit different for play-by-play guys than it is for analysts. So, you know, my job is to set these guys up, make sure that they're addressing all the right things, and, you know, just kind of guide this little ship through the night. But part of that is identifying players and being on top of the action and knowing what in the world is happening. And when you're not there,
I can't imagine.
It's really it's a white knuckle ride, because I can't see. Now, I'll just, not to bore your viewers to death here, but like as a play happens, right, as I'm watching the field from my perspective, obviously there's the pitch that you're concerned about. But when the ball's in play, boom, there it goes out into right field. Okay, well, the right fielder's angling at it. I may or may not be focused on describing what he's doing because the runner at first may have gotten a good jump or a bad jump, and I may have at least one of my eyes on him, like, what's he doing?
Right.
How did the guy get out of the box? Is there anybody coming to back him up? Where's the cutoff man going? There are like, 7 or 8 different things you're looking at. Third base coach, he's anticipating stuff. And so all that stuff, is part of my calculus as the call's being made. You rise to the moment. You're trying to rise to the moment. You're trying to identify what piece matters. And so, what if the right fielder, I don't know, trips, just stumbles briefly, but I don't catch that because
You're watching
I'm
screen.
watching a third base coach. Yeah, but that's the thing, right? I am a prisoner to whatever that screen is showing me.
Right.
And so you're screaming and yelling about something and thinking something's happening. Well, and it's not. Right?
Yeah.
The guy's laying out there on his face on the warning track, and you're concerned about what the third base coach is doing. Is he waving him or not waving him? Well, you don't have to do anything. The guy's laying down out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that to me was like every single play. As a play-by-play guy, we all tend to think that what we do is really important, right? Oh, man, how could the fan enjoy the game without me telling him that was a double, that they just watched with their own eyes?
Right.
But, we're all very insecure about being exposed as idiots, right? As
I am,
play
for
guys.
sure, yeah.
It's terrifying. You don't want to look like a fool. And so, I mean, when I say it's a white knuckle ride, it was intense. It was exhausting because I'm watching that thing as close as I can and calculating everything else that I could imagine could be a part of it, and then just hoping and praying that I'm getting it right. And we've seen it even this year, and now it's really distinct when you see now some of these teams that aren't traveling their announcers and what's going on in their broadcasts, and they're getting blown.
Oh.
Excuse me, pardon me. But they're getting blown up on Twitter and stuff for mistakes that are a function of how they're trying to cover the game. So I hated it.
Yeah.
And then worse still was I got into all this stuff because I loved the characters, the personalities.
Sure.
When we were kids, the way the games were presented to us was probably different than it is today. We didn't have as much, but I wanted to be a part of the action, man. I want to be down there with the players and the managers and the coaches and the umpires and know just the little minutia that made the moments. And when you can't be there with them, you can't talk to them, you can't even get a sense for their moods.
Yeah.
It just, it's very, this is a weird word that you may have picked up during the pandemic. It was isolating.
Oh.
Yeah. I felt isolated.
Oh, imagine that. Well,
So there was a game last year. It was in June, and the Rangers were at Oakland, so you were at the ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a day game, and there were at least 2 home runs. Joey Gallo hit one of them, but it was watching the game, and you were relying on the other team's production crew.
Yeah.
And so like they were just showing the right fielder, and you're like, there's a fly ball to right field, and the right fielder looked like he's camping under it. He turned around, and it's like 90 rows deep.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it's a home run. I felt so bad for you guys.
I remember some of those calls that he would do. Joey hits one right front. Oh, it's gone. And he was after it had landed 14 rows back or whatever. When he would have been calling that one. That one looks good. It's
or
deep.
It's off the bat. It's no doubt.
Yeah.
But you have no idea.
You have no idea.
But
You saw what we saw.
Yeah.
And Seattle was another one. There was another. Dadgummit, there was something in Seattle that something funky happened on a play.
Oh.
I can't remember it, but you guys were like, I don't know what the hell. You didn't say I don't know what the hell's going on, but I could feel it in you.
Yeah.
Saying,
You try not to expose that either, right? Because you just wanted to, perpetuate this sort of mystery that, well, where are those guys? They must be there or something. I don't know how they got there, but
right.
But no, it was that's the thing. The road games in particular, absolutely terrifying for those moments.
So it's good to be back out.
It is so good to be back. I really, on the other hand, that's the upside of this whole thing is the appreciation of being back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just the mood. Yesterday in the clubhouse, Jeff walked over at some point and was like, "This was the greatest day I've ever had in the clubhouse." Like like an 8th grade kid, right? Like
Oh,
just
so productive.
it was so and it was awesome. Just certain guys were available and chatty but really
We haven't had
it's
that
like,
for 3 years.
we haven't been around them and even if they aren't that chatty or available or whatever, it's like, hey, Jeff's here, you know, I can see Jeff and hang out. Like it's just such a different animal now. So yeah, you just appreciate everything a little bit more, I think.
So the Rangers come back from the Bay Area, which is where much of the Dave Raymond story.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have some fun here in a minute.
Oh, boy.
This story is amazing, guys. If you haven't heard this, I've heard him talk about it before, but there's more. First of all, you're from Gering, Nebraska. Is
That's
that
right.
Were you born there, or you grew up there?
No, I was born in Orlando, Florida.
Near Nebraska.
Right,
Right.
just outside of Nebraska. Yeah, I was born in Orlando, Florida. My dad was working at Disney World, or what was to be Disney World.
Okay.
And he had kind of it was like startup days. So he was working in the hotel, like reservation center, trying to figure out logistics of, I guess, how that would work.
Yeah.
And then sometimes he would wear the costumes and be in the park, you know, walking around, hey kids, and signing autographs.
Right.
And the day I was born, he was Goofy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the day I was
Wow,
born, he was.
all right.
He was
You
Goofy.
learn something new on this
Yeah.
show.
Some
every
parallels
week.
there.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So he was out there signing autographs, and my poor mom was
In labor.
in labor. It's always a
I
fun-
don't know if back then they even went in the delivery room. I mean,
No, they didn't.
They didn't. They didn't for me, so I don't remember that.
I'm just envisioning him getting to the hospital, Goofy mask off,
Yeah.
sucking on some heaters, waiting to find out.
Ooh, boy or girl?
Now, so Gary, Nebraska. I guess you went to high school there. Did you play any sports in high school?
Yeah. Anything and everything, of course.
How big was it? Was it a big school? Or?
No, I mean, for that part of the country. So Gering's in the Panhandle of Nebraska, out
Okay.
by Wyoming, and it's a tiny town, maybe 5,000 people. But it was also the town, amazingly, that other towns they would, you know, get the family, put them in the wagon, and come into Gering, maybe to do a little shopping
Right.
or
Okay.
something like that.
Going
you
to the
know?
big city. All
Go to
right.
the- yeah. So it wasn't an insignificant town, but it wasn't a big city. So like my class had 110 in it, I think.
Okay.
Which was at the time the largest graduating class at the
Wow.
schools
Okay.
in the school's history. But so anyway, yeah, I played a little football for a while. Was a backup quarterback. The long 2-hour story about my quarterbacking career. It's really
We're
fun.
trying to keep it tight here.
Yeah, I don't want to. But after my sophomore year, I gave that up and did a little cross country. But I was more a basketball player, track. I loved baseball. Not surprisingly, so much.
Yeah.
So much. But I never played on the high school team. Didn't play on any travel teams.
But those weren't around when I was a kid.
No, but I played, in the local leagues and stuff. But I tried hard, and I was a pretty good athlete growing up. But baseball's tough, right?
Yep.
Being an athlete doesn't make you a good baseball player. It just
Exactly.
doesn't. And being a good baseball player doesn't make you a good athlete.
Right,
So,
right.
Sure.
but I struggled, and to the point where I was like 13 or 14. I remember one summer, I'd really, really committed myself in a way that was probably unnatural, because I just wanted to make an all-star team once. I just wanted to be cool. And so I got off to a good start, and I would go to the batting cages, ride my bike, and go hit and all this other stuff. And about midsummer, I started getting the worst stomach pains. And
Oh,
it was
no.
every day. And I was just basically twisting myself up in crazy knots. I was having trouble sleeping at night, and I'm leading off from my pillow. And I mean, just got super goofy. And I was like, maybe I ought to rein this one in a little bit. But so I made one all-star team as a kid, sat the bench for the most part, and cracked wise, and then and that was that. But I was more a good basketball player and jumper, really, in track.
Okay, so you're growing up in Nebraska. What are your favorite teams growing up? I mean, who did you follow? Did you not really have one? You just kind of who was on TV a lot? Or?
Yeah, we were pretty much out in the middle of nowhere, and we didn't have cable and the whole superstation and all that stuff. So I was a Broncos guy, because
Okay.
we got that, and Kansas City would have been the closest team at the time, but I wasn't, I just wasn't all into that. Eventually, for some reason, I think the first game I ever went to, my parents took us to a Braves game in Atlanta, and they were terrible, right?
Right.
Just a
Oh, yeah.
horrible, horrible team. But they had Dale Murphy, and he was great. And
Yeah.
I ended up just thinking he hung the moon. And so then I kind of became a Braves fan, you know.
Even though you didn't get the station that played all of
not until I was like a junior or senior in high school. It might have been my senior year in high school. We got, you know, the cable and the WTBS and all that stuff. And I was so excited, but then I went off to school. And so it was interesting, right? I think there's something to it, having actually not been indoctrinated by a team and or their announcers at the time.
Sure.
My exposure as a kid to announcers was like Joe Garagiola, Bob Uecker, the guys on the Game of the Week or the World Series.
Sure.
And so I loved them. Joe Garagiola was my guy. I mean, that was the guy. I just thought he was crazy awesome. He was funny. He was good, versatile.
Now, that's interesting. Is that when did you think that you wanted to get into sports broadcasting? Was it when you were in high school, or did you get to college and think maybe this is something I want to do?
No. So
there's a turning point somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I envy the guys who have that story, right?
Right.
Who were as children dreaming of that at age 8 or something. I didn't ever think of anything in terms of jobs, right? I don't think I ever wanted a job.
Yeah.
So like the idea of being a policeman or a fireman or a doctor or something was like, well, I don't want to go to work. You know, I ended up, and I think too, where I grew up, it was pretty obvious that you grew up and you were a farmer or you worked in some sort of support of farms.
Right.
So that's really all I knew. And I think it's interesting now as an adult out in the world, and I've lived mostly in metropolitan areas. You know, you'll hear people talking about like, you know, hey, there's real value in kids seeing this, seeing that, or young kids learning about this profession or that profession. And you're like, you darn tootin', because if they don't see it, if they're not aware of it, then how would they ever know? And you wouldn't. And so like I didn't know. But anyway, I went to college and just thought I would be something. I would be professional at something, maybe an attorney or something like that. But then late in college, as everything else was unraveling, and I had no clue what to do with myself.
So did you get a scholarship? Now, listen, he goes to Stanford.
Yeah.
You ran track at Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you get a scholarship, obviously, or nothing? Stanford's where you went, and you just ended up what?
Yeah. So when I was midway through high school, and I, again, you know, didn't really know what to do or how to do it, I had this teacher, one of my track and assistant basketball coaches came up to me and was like, hey, Ray, he's like, what would you think about going to a school like Columbia? It's like, Columbia? And I will say, one of the first book reports I ever did, or autobiographies, was on Lou Gehrig.
Yeah, right.
And this is like 5th grade, and I thought I was, whoa, he went to Ivy League school, Columbia, and he was like the smart guy. I was infatuated with this notion. So I thought, Columbia? That's outrageous. I mean, I guess, sure, yeah, I'd go to Columbia. So he had gotten a note from their track coach and was like, look, we have trouble getting athletes who are, you know, the quick twitch, you know, jumper, sprinter type guys. If you've got anybody who'd, you know, be potential for us, we'd be interested. So he sent my name in. They started recruiting me. And then that got my dad all geared up. And he was like, and I really wanted to go to Stanford at the time. He said, well, we should write the Stanford coach. So we wrote the Stanford coach, and they got involved. And they're like, yeah, we're interested. So, you know, today they call it a preferred walk-on, right? Mm-hmm. So you're recruited to be a walk-on. I would say it's similar. And the deal was, like, if I hit NCAA qualifying marks in long jump or triple jump, then I'd get a full scholarship. Well, that's goofy. You know, they gave me, you know, I knew what those numbers were. I was like, oh, well, that's just this much. Well, I could do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was
a big slap of reality hit you in the face there.
Yeah.
So after track,
mm-hmm.
well, not after track, because you ran track there, you were the senior class president at Stanford University?
Well, it turns out those two are related, actually, because I quit track.
Oh, well, see that? I called it. So I knew this. Okay.
Yeah, the track career didn't take off quite the way I'd hoped it would.
I think you said the other day on the broadcast that you were busy with your carb intake.
Yes. Yeah. I you know, you learn things along the way, right? But yeah, my carbohydrate intake had advanced to such a level at college where I found it actually detrimental to the track career.
What was your favorite carb at the time?
Was it like malted beverages, or
I
were
like-
you?
Those worked.
Yes, those worked.
Yeah, because that's the other thing you discover in college, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I learned how to do that, and I had trouble. I have a time management problem,
Okay.
which your editors are going to run into,
Right.
cleaning this thing up. But so we had mandatory weightlifting at 6 a.m. and stuff like that. And it was a struggle for me to get to those things, man.
Right.
Oy. And then I noticed the performance wasn't exactly keeping up, and then I'm nodding off in classes. So anyway, I quit this was the best part, was I quit my freshman year.
Okay.
I quit like spring quarter my freshman year. I was like, oh, that's great, I'm out. Thank God, this is whew. And my coach kept calling me, hey, we need you to practice. I was like, no, I quit. No, you didn't. I said, no, I quit. I'm wasting your time and you're wasting mine. I mean, this is not going anywhere. They're like, no, we need you. I'm like, you cannot be serious. Like, you see what I can do. Like, this is not good for anyone. And she was so great. She was like, you actually play a very important function on our team. Because I was the team clown.
Oh my gosh.
And I was, during practice, I'd just make fun of myself and just be goofing around all the time. And for some reason, our head coach, he'd coached some Olympics and stuff like that. Brooks Johnson, he was a tough bird, man.
Yeah.
He was not playing. But I couldn't read the room. And so I just flipped him all kinds of grief.
Right.
And then he would make an example of me, and he would just punish me no end. And they loved it. Everybody loved it. And so I was like the rally loser, on the team. And so, and believe it or not, that argument worked. I was like, well,
Hey.
now that you mention it, I am pretty funny. So, I kind of been thinking about a few things. So I went back and I ran for like 2 more years. And finally, my junior year, I was just like, Betsy, I'm out. I can't. We got a new coach. He really didn't respect jumpers and sprinters and so on.
Comedy.
Yes,
comedy.
or the comedy. Yeah.
He had no sense of timing.
He could read the room or whatever.
Yeah. So I was out. But I was, at that time, then I was like, but I've got to, I got to do something, because it was a big part of my identity, and it was really hard, right? I wanted people to know, like, oh, that's Dave. He's a varsity athlete, right?
Right.
Like somehow that tag or something meant something to me, even though everyone I knew, it meant nothing to them because I wasn't a good varsity athlete. They're like, oh, there's Dave. He's my friend from this class. Or there's Dave. Oh, he's that funny guy that I met. But no one cared. Like, oh, he's a long jumper? Like, what kind of game is that? Well, perhaps you saw me the other day, 22 feet 4 inches. Yeah, it was great. Not wind dated either. So I quit that, and I was like, I got into student government.
Yeah.
And the radio, the KZSU radio thing, because I was like, that seemed like fun too. And so that quitting track led me to those 2 things.
Okay, so what is the story about you living in your car? Did I hear that? You did.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, lived in or out of or both.
Right. You were sleeping in your car.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I graduated and I didn't have a job, and
that thing you were talking about that you didn't know what those were when you were in high school. Yeah.
Never wanted one.
Never wanted one. Okay.
I had just kind of gotten into the radio thing and figured out like, well, that's the direction I want to go. So I was inexperienced to the point where I didn't think I could. Well, I just couldn't get a job right then.
Right.
And at the same time, I didn't want to bog myself down with a lease, a couch. You know what I mean? Like
utility bills.
Yeah, these things are all, well, they're traps. I mean, they really are traps, right? I recognize that at the outset. I'm like, if I sign a 6, 8, 10, whatever, 2-year, whatever lease, however that works.
Right.
Well, then I'm stuck. What if I get a call from the, I don't know, the Southern Oregon Timberjacks.
Yeah.
We need a guy. I want to go.
You want to be ready to go.
So that was largely the motivation, that and the fact that there was no income. And
that's a problem.
And no one would give me a lease. So, so I couch surfed for a while. Also from the student government days, I had keys to every building on campus.
Wow.
KZSU, I had all the keys to that building. I had keys to the student union. And so I would go and at night I would sleep in there And then I would run out, and every once in a while there'd be a close call where you'd hear somebody coming in early, and you're like, oh God, I'm on the couch in this reception area.
Yeah.
So there were some dicey moments, but it was just about just trying to avoid being trapped. And and I think I tell kids this stuff at times when you talk to classes and stuff. They'll ask about that time, and it's scary to them to think of that. And
Right.
it wasn't scary to me, but I had it all figured out. You get a banana and a day-old donut at the country market. I would shower at the Stanford pools.
Right.
And, so I had all these little things that worked and ways to get food. And so I felt like I could pull it off for a while. And I knew, look, at the end of the day, if things went terribly wrong, right, I had a great network of friends, and I had a family back in Nebraska that would welcome me back with
Sure.
open arms. So, I've talked to kids in tougher neighborhoods and stuff, and they talk about food insecurity, and I have to stop. I'm like, look, man, listen, what I'm talking about, it doesn't compare to real kids with real food insecurities.
Sure.
Like, I knew somewhere back there was a safety net. So,
Right.
It was insane. It was also really fun.
Yeah.
And it, Lord knows it ultimately it worked out. I'm on my feet now, and I'm gainfully employed,
You're
and
on
I
your
have a
feet.
place to live.
Yeah. How did it happen? What was your first major league job? I mean, yeah, obviously you had to work at the minors. You did some other things, called some other sports.
What was your path? Yeah, that's the.
It's a long winding path, and I'll spare you some of the details. But you got to get a minor league job if you want to do what I wanted to do. And
Right.
I was pretty clear, pretty focused on what I wanted. Right, which
Right.
was I wasn't worried about being a sports announcer. I didn't want to be a talk show guy. I didn't want to be a football announcer. I wanted to be a baseball play-by-play guy.
Okay.
So that really made it pretty clear what the path was. So I had to go get the minor league job. So I worked 4 years for an independent league team, the Sonoma County Crushers, and got a lot of experience, a lot of reps there, and I needed them badly. And then I went from there, got a job in Charleston, South Carolina for a year, and then that led to a really weird off season, but ultimately landed, in Des Moines, Iowa, with the Iowa Cubs, a AAA team, and spent 5 years there. And I thought, well, that's it, right? Once I got there, I was like, no, I'm good.
Okay.
This will lead to what I need. Well, I got a fill-in job with the Giants 1 year, and then a Cubs job came open, and I couldn't get any traction with the Cubs, which is weird. I was like, well, I've been in your AAA guy for 5 years. You know me. I know your players, et cetera. Like, I'm not even going to interview for the job. That was scary.
Right.
I was like, holy crud. I mean, we're 10 years in, 11 years in on this thing, and I got no traction with my team.
Yeah.
So I panicked, and I was like, I'm out. And I got one last angle that I'll take, and that would be to go into a big market with a minor league team. So I went to the Brockton Rocks, which is a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts. And I figured I'll embed myself in a market, maybe meet some people, get some credibility there or something. Maybe that's part of the problem. I don't know. Also had a fill-in job with the Orioles that year. That saved me because I turned into the Astros full-time job. But I wanted to see, like, do I love it for just what it is? Because you start to wind yourself up.
Right.
Every day is about leaving the job you currently have. Well, that's not a fun way to exist, I can tell you.
Exactly.
I did it for years. So I was like, I need to find out, do I actually still love what I'm doing? Like, that's a good test by going to Brockton. And then maybe this little experiment works. Well, I went there and I was having fun. I still loved it. And I just let go. I just kind of let go at that point. And that really helped. And that, with the Baltimore job, I just chilled and just did the games, didn't stress out about the Orioles games. And those tapes ended up being good and got me a job in Houston. And
then that led you here.
That led me here, yeah.
Okay. Heard a rumor.
Uh-oh.
Maybe I read this. Are you the only minor league play-by-play guy that was involved in a trade?
No.
Oh.
Well, I guess but were you traded?
So I was traded.
Not for your bat to ball skills.
Nor really for my broadcasting skills. But the cool thing about this to me is when they did the trade, so I was in Charleston in 99, and I loved it. I thought it was great. It was my first year with an affiliated team. They were the Devil Rays at the time.
Right.
It's fair to say. Devil Rays, single A affiliate.
I believe they still are, by the way.
And the Rays.
Correct.
Yeah. So I was kind of content to be there for a few more years.
Sure.
This was Mike Veck, Bill Veck's son.
Okay.
And Bill Veck, the crazy impresario.
Right,
Absolutely.
back in the
Marketing
day.
baseball genius.
Yes. Yeah. Well, his son, Bill Murray, they had this great ownership group. They were really fun. It was wild to be with them. And they proposed a trade to me in probably like February. Well, how about this crazy idea? We trade you to St. Paul, and you go work for the St. Paul Saints. And then their announcers will come back down here and do this. And I was like, well, I mean, but I don't really want to go to St. Paul. I kind of like it.
Minnesota, or is that St.
Yeah.
Paul,
And
Minnesota?
they were independent.
And they were independent. I just gone into affiliated ball, and I was like, well, I don't feel like this is really being done in my best interest.
Yes.
Am I misreading this here? And they're like, well, we think it'd be. I said, yeah, it's cool for you guys. That would be neat. Oh, it'll get a lot of coverage and press and everything. I'm like, yeah. But it is still sort of my life, right, in my profession. So it didn't sit well with me, but I really had no choice. And they kind of made that point too, because they own both teams and everything. And so they made the trade. And it just so happened in the intervening couple of weeks, I got the job in Iowa.
That's what I heard.
Was able to bolt. Now, all right, all this stuff, and so it still gets in Sports Illustrated, and they're having fun with it, and everybody's happy. And then only like a little bit later, when people would be like, "Oh, you were traded. You're an announcer who was traded." And stuff. I said, yeah, well, there was one other announcer in the history of baseball that was traded. You guys know who it was?
I do not.
Ernie Harwell
Oh.
was with the Atlanta Crackers back in the day, and Detroit had a spare catcher that the Crackers they needed this catcher and whatever, and so Tigers were like, well, we'll trade this catcher for Ernie.
We need a play-by-play.
Ernie goes to
What a trade.
Detroit, and the rest is like history.
What a
Oh
trade.
my
So
gosh!
unbelievable.
Who was the catcher?
Don't know.
We'll have to look that up.
We'll have to look it up.
We'll have that answer for you.
But it's that kind of made it all taste a little better at the end of the day, right? I'm like, well, if it was good enough for Ernie, then by George, it'll be good enough for me.
That's
Well,
crazy.
Speaking of backup catchers and announcers and everything, the clubhouse opens in 35 minutes.
Get out of here.
I'm not lying. I am not lying.
No, I think it's an hour, right? Until
It was 2:35, I thought.
oh no, I thought it was Woody at 2:50 and then 3 o'clock.
Oh, well, let's keep going then.
Yeah.
We just got a couple more because we're getting into what you'd like to do in your spare time and stuff like that.
Sure.
What do you do outside of the? I mean, you got kids. Obviously, one of your kids hit a home run last year. I remember that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And it hit one over the fence. What do you do in your spare time? What do you like to do?
So spare time, it's really simple, right? I mean, obviously family stuff. I think most of us are similar in that way.
Yes.
Love to just do whatever the family's got going, or just come up with stuff for them to do. But I love traveling, which is part of why the job's so great for me.
Right.
I really, really, really love golfing a lot, and I try to golf as much as I can, and I just want to get better. And
Do the sticks go with you when you?
they used to.
They used
Yeah,
to.
they can't anymore, but
They don't allow it.
they don't allow it. We don't have room on the planes anymore.
Oh, okay. All right. Because you travel with the team.
Yeah, and the traveling party's grown
It's
enormously.
enormous.
Yeah, we had over 70 on our trip to Toronto to open the season.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
it's getting big, and there's a lack of room. And then the other thing, and this isn't exclusive for you guys.
Oh, man.
Okay.
big
Yeah.
scoop.
Exclusive
Yeah.
coming up. Breaking news.
I actually will brag about this. I make elderberry jelly, and you're probably not familiar with it. You don't see it in the supermarket, but my mom used to make it when I was a kid.
Okay.
And elderberries grow in the wild all over where I was from, ditch banks and stuff like that. And we go down and we clip off these little elderberries, and they're tiny. They're bigger than a BB, but they're small,
Right.
little berries, and they're very deep, rich purple color.
I knew
Anyway,
that.
it takes a ton of them to get really anything out of them.
Okay.
So, but then you take the juice and you make this jelly, and it's delicious jelly. It's one of my favorite things on the planet. My mom's always made it, and I, even as an adult now, I'm 50 years old, and she's still for years has been sending me jelly.
Right.
But her jelly hasn't got it's kind of no offense to Mom, but I don't know if her heart's into it anymore.
Okay.
Oh boy.
So, but for about 15 years or so, I've been trying to find elderberries and cultivate elderberries so I could make my own. And last year, for the first time in my life, my own elderberry plants that grow like weeds in my backyard, much to my neighbors and my wife's dismay, they make just a horrible mess. But every night after games, I would go home and I would, like midnight, I'd be out there with my flashlight looking at the elderberries and getting if there were any like stink bugs or anything, trying to get on there and eat my elderberries. I'd flick them off because I'm a nut. And then I harvest them, and I made elderberry jelly last year, a batch and a half, and it's the best. It came out so great. Sent a bunch to my mom. She loves them. My brothers, they all love it. And it's
So you've got the
best.
elderberries going now. They're still there?
And now my elderberry plants are thriving. So yeah.
So what's a batch? How many?
I get about
canisters?
nine jars of jelly, which is maybe a little more than a cup
Okay.
of jelly in each jar. So I get about 9 cups or so of jelly. In a
Well,
batch.
I mean, if you want to start marketing that stuff, I mean, we'll do product placement.
Yeah,
Yes. Bring you on to talk about
I
it.
might have to bring some in for you guys.
Sample.
We're going to have to
A little
sample
sample
it,
ad.
to make sure.
And now elderberries are like famously, antioxidant
Right,
or
right,
whatever.
right. That's,
People
right.
love them.
That's how I know them.
Yeah. But they're great. It's great.
It's
Okay.
It's a health food.
It is.
What you're saying.
I didn't know it at the time. Growing up, I just thought it was sweet jelly.
So beyond the elderberries,
Yeah.
what's your favorite food? What do you like to eat? Are you a seafood guy? Are you what is
I used to be really a steak guy. Shocking from where I grew up.
Right.
I'm not eating the red meat as much anymore. I'm kind of Albert Pujols during the pandemic, when this whole thing, about staying healthy and staying on the field, anti-inflammatory diet, and he kept me looking into all this stuff. And so I've kind of cut a lot of red meat out.
Okay.
I love plant-based everything. I like all this, Miracle Burger stuff. But my favorite food has always been spaghetti. My wife's spaghetti is
That
so
answers
good.
the next one. So
Yeah.
the best home cooked meal is your wife's spaghetti.
I love her spaghetti. Yeah, it's so good. She makes a lot. My wife is a really, really good cook, and she bakes a ton, and she's really good at that too. It's like I'm super blessed, man. She's trying her best to put me in an early fat grave, but yeah. So, but I've always loved spaghetti. I don't know why. And she makes a delicious spaghetti.
Okay, well, we're going to do 2 more. I'm going to end it with the one we always end on. We're going to ask something we don't know about Dave. Although
Well, I
he's
mean, the elderberry thing is pretty much.
it might be the answer to that.
Yeah.
This is the question that gets a lot of fun stuff. John Daniels, it's what's one thing nobody knows about you. That's how we found out about Brock Burke and the sleepwalking. If you don't know that story about him and the sleepwalking, Jack Leiter hates peanut butter, hates it.
That's a shame.
That's crazy. John Daniels has airplane underwear that he wears.
Do tell.
It's a certain. It's like
They're like bright colors.
that he likes bright. It's a certain that he wears. He feels he's been safe every time, and I mean he's got his own underwear for the planes. And his wife sent him 2 pairs on road trips so that he has one to come home in, so that in case he doesn't get to wash them. That's exclusive.
That is an exclusive. That was
an
broken
exclusive.
here as well.
It was. That was episode 1 of the video.
Episode 1 of that here. So, is there anything besides what you said that's something that nobody knows about Dave Raymond?
Well, I suspect there are probably a lot of things. But the elderberry thing, that wasn't.
That's
that
actually
legitimately
cool.
wasn't
That's fantastic.
exclusive.
Yeah.
Nobody knows that. I'm trying to think if there was any other. A lot of stuff that I don't want to talk about.
That's fine.
Yeah. I don't know. I get poison ivy all the time.
How do
All the time. And I swear to you, you don't even, you think you have to be like in
it,
ivy,
in it,
right?
right.
But I swear to you, if I walk by somebody who mentions poison ivy,
You'll get
I'll
it.
break out.
And that's the strangest
crazy.
thing. I can lay and roll in it, and it never.
No
bugs me.
way.
Absolutely, it's the weirdest. Now I haven't done it in years, but as a kid, we'd be in a patch of poison ivy playing near the creeks, and everyone would get it, and I could just be rolling around
All right.
in it. Never
Next
got
episode, we're getting some poison ivy and rubbing it on.
Yeah.
We're gonna test it on
Well,
me. Yeah,
make sure I'm not here for that. I get it so bad now that let's say I get a little exposure on a wrist or something like that. The old spots where I've had problems in the past will pop up.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So like,
Oh my
an
gosh.
inside leg or, down on an ankle, you're like, oh, yeah, I
You
remember
just
that
go
one.
hiking and run into it?
Yeah. Actually, elderberries back in the day, when we go down the ditch banks and get the berries, I got into a bunch one year, and it was awful. And as a kid, you can withstand a lot of stuff. When I got over it, next year it was time to go do elderberries again. I took out those same cowboy boots.
Oh my
and put
gosh.
them on. Unwittingly,
broke out.
and I've got it everywhere again. And my dad was at least smart enough to say, like, dummy, it's those boots. I was like, oh.
That's total
So
sense.
leaves of 3, let it be. Is that correct?
That is true.
Okay.
That is true.
We're just live by.
Last question's from a fan. Joe Siegler runs the big Texas Ranger fan Facebook page. He wants to know, other than the obvious Vin Scully, I think I might know your answer to this. Who is someone you would love to work with in a booth?
Anyone from any time?
That's what I'm thinking,
Well,
because I would think
Joe
Garrett
Garagiola is going to be your answer there.
Correct.
that would be your guy.
Well,
What
not
about if someone that's still around?
Current guy. Yeah.
Yeah, current guy, I was fortunate. I've actually worked with him, and that's John Miller. He's my favorite by a mile.
Right.
And he's, because he,
Yes.
he'll go off the charted path that day, and he's super fun. So yeah, John's a definite guy. Joe Garagiola would be
Like your dream thing. That would be You would just sit there and stare at him the whole time and try to interject.
So funny you say that, because the game I worked with John, that's kind of what I did. And he was going off on the 69 Mets and telling these great stories and stuff, and I was just sitting there going,
You're just looking at him like,
I can't. There's nothing for me to drop in here because I'm just mesmerized by your story.
Can you impersonate other announcers?
Yeah, almost. Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah,
Can
but John for sure.
do one.
Because John calls me, and God bless him. He's awesome. His introductions if he leaves you a voicemail, it's always the same. It's like, Dave, John Miller calling. It's 2:03 p.m. Central Daylight Time, which means it's just afternoon out here on the Pacific Coast. On, I kid you not, Wednesday, the 27th of April. So, anyway, just wanted to see what was going on. And you're like, wow, it took a little while to get there, John. He's the best, though, man.
Yeah.
And there's no short conversation with him. It's always, we play Stratomatic together, and he's the best. He is the best.
Well, look, we're going to let you get out of here. You guys are going both to the game today. I'm not going to be there today. I'm going Friday. But
Ooh, looks like we're doing the heavy lifting.
you are. You're going to be doing. I'll be watching from your TV tonight, trying to see if you call it right now that you can be in front of the players.
We didn't want to waste all my material here. So.
That's right.
That's right.
We'll see if
you never know what's coming tonight.
See if he makes any callbacks tonight from here that he brings up today on there. Yeah. Dave, thanks so much for joining us. It's Dave Raymond, Texas Rangers play-by-play guy. Fantastic having him on. We'll see you out the yard, guy, and thanks so much for doing it.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, guys, now we're going to go down in the bus leagues, and we're going to talk about the minor leagues. Big thanks to Dave Raymond for joining us and coming in here and talking with us now. We want to touch on the minor leagues because this Rangers Today and this podcast is going to always do minor league stuff and focus on. Let's go over the records at each level, what they're doing. By the way, records mean nothing. This is all about development.
Right.
Let's go last 10 games. Down east, they're 7-8. That's low A. If you don't know how this works, low A, high A, double A, triple A. Low A down east is 7-8. Last 10 games are 6-4. They're starting to pick up a little bit. There's a couple of names down there to watch for. It was a couple of guys that if they was in that.
I think I said this last week. I'm a big Marcus Smith guy. He's off to a real slow start, but you couldn't.
We saw him at spring
you
training.
couldn't get enough people it was just unbelievable how much.
Player development was all over.
Yeah, thank you for finishing my sentence. I was trying to think of something clever, and it just. Anyway, yeah, people love Marcus Smith. He's fast. He hits for power.
He's
he
fun
can hit
to
for
look
average.
at too, boy.
He's a really good guy.
Yep.
He and I talked about Kansas City barbecue for a while because he's from Kansas City. He's a Gates guy. But anyway, good guy, just off to a slow start. He only played 3 games last year because of a chronic recurring hamstring injury.
Right.
So, he's kind of starting. Last year, you just really didn't really count. So he played in instructs and everything, but he's getting some real legitimate feel now for a season. And Josh Steffen has had some nice starts, and he's from South Grand Prairie.
He's the one that signed free agent, right?
Right.
The shortened draft. Though.
Yeah, but the 5-round draft, you're able to sign an unlimited number of guys, free agents, but only for $20,000. And he was smart enough to realize that he didn't want to go to college, and so he took the $20,000 and
he's capitalized.
And now he's a professional baseball player. And I think he's opened some eyes,
Sure.
Last year with what he did in instructs and the complex league. So anyway, yeah, down east, very young team too. You can always count on your high A team or your low A team being young and having to have these little hiccups from time to time.
Yeah, and that team's gonna get better because you're
Sure.
gonna see the Cam Collies and all of those guys
Yeah.
are gonna eventually
Yeah.
end up there before the end of the year. Hickory Crawdads, that's your high A team. It's a fun team to watch. That's a talented team right now. 7-9 on the record. Last 10 games, they're 4-6. Means nothing again. Vanasco went last night. This is a name we've talked about a lot. This is a guy that Rangers see as potential ace. He is scuttled at first. Last night, he ended up going 4 innings.
Mm-hmm.
No runs. He had 5 Ks in 4 innings.
Yeah.
6 strikeouts in 4 innings.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what we know of Vanasco. He did walk 2. I think that's kind of been his problem. Just a little more control. We talked to him in fall instructs. We've had him on. We're going to try to get him on here again. And look, this guy's ramped up with the injury. He hasn't pitched in a while. All the hype about his. I just think he's got to settle into his.
Well, and he probably is. That start probably showed him a lot last night. And you will still find guys in the organization who when they talk about Cole Winn and Jack Leiter and Owen White, say Ricky Vanasco might be the best of all of them.
Might be.
Yep. And again, the injury, the Tommy John in 20, not pitching in 20, then the Tommy John, then not pitching last year. He's not behind, but I think he's got a chance to finish in Double-A. But you're right, he's so intense and excited and wants to murder the batters.
Yep.
He just has to calm down a little bit and everything else come together. But at high A, I think we talked about Evan Carter last week. He's still atop the lineup, hasn't homered yet, but he's still hitting 300.
Right.
Aaron Zavala is struggling, the second-round pick last year. I think that's just a temporary thing. But yeah, that rotation is Vanasco, Owen White,
Roby,
TK Roby, who had a great start last time out, Mason Engler. It looks like they've made 3 or 4 starts. They've each had maybe one stinker, or they're not throwing 7 innings at a time. So it's kind of like a reliever. You have one bad start, and it takes a while to make
the
up
ERA
make up for it. But
and don't always buy into ERA in the minor leagues. Let me tell you something. There are balls where they can get a ground ball that is going to be an out at the higher level that sometimes sneaks through and becomes a base hit and an earned run. I'm telling you, it's miles per hour off the bat that they're watching, missing bats, and obviously you can't be walking everyone. And of course, hey, when you get into the minor leagues, you don't only have minor league players, you have minor league umpires. And these are guys whose zones may tend to be a little more, kind of, let's just say they're having to learn it too and get up there too. And that's why they're at that level going up. Let's go into Frisco, 10-6. They're doing well. Only 5-5 the last 10 games. That's Hickory, Frisco, maybe the 2 most talented teams in the system.
Well, they definitely have the most
Pitching.
talented pitching staffs. Zach Kent came back yesterday for Frisco. He had been on the injured list just with a little hamstring thing. They just didn't want to risk anything. But he's one of those guys. Cole Reagans has pitched well.
Yep.
Jack Leiter, of course, has
Obviously,
been sensational. Our good friend Cody Bradford had a rough one last time out, but you know what? Wins and losses matter at some point. You want these guys to have success, win together, and learn how to win. But there's also times when, if the roster's short or, you're short on pitching or whatever, you're going to have a start like Cody had where he gave up 10 runs. And he didn't give up all of those. Some of those came in after he left, but that's just going to happen.
Right.
But these guys are very talented. And on the offensive side, you've seen Dustin Harris start to come around.
Yep.
Ezekiel Duran, John Ornelas, who I really like as a potential utility guy once he learns how to hit. he's got a chance to be a utility guy. I don't think he's an everyday player in the majors.
Is he a switch hitter?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But anyway, good athlete, and Ezekiel Duran hit his first AA home, or his first home run with Frisco. So those are all positive signs. And again, 10-6. Our man Chase Lee still pitching good.
Yes,
our guest
exactly.
last week. So
Yep.
yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of concerns at Frisco right now.
Well, it's nice to get a winning culture at the top of the organization too. So you got Frisco 10-6. You got Round Rock, who's 13-6. They've had a longer season. They started before the major league team started. Last 10, they're 8-2. They've been going along there. What about Round Rock? Talk about Cole Winn. Came out early last night. What happened?
Cole Winn got hit in the foot by a hard grounder or a line drive. Got hit in the heel. They took him out of the game. I think he was at less than 50 pitches. He limped out. I guess when he was out of the game and probably back in the dugout or the clubhouse getting some treatment on his arm and his foot, and he was looking at his phone, looking at the Ranger stuff, and all of a sudden I get a notification that Cole Winn is now following me on Twitter, and so I take a screenshot and I send it to him. I say, I hope you're out of the game, because I think there's some times when you may not want to be on your phone or active on social media, and he said he had accidentally followed me, which I didn't know to take that. I kind of took it as an insult, but he said no, it was a good accident, and I was like, all right. But he said he's going to be fine, so he's going to get looked at today. They hope it's just a bruise, and maybe he misses a start. I don't know, but
probably because you know what, they're going to protect him.
They need to be careful with him, but. He'd allowed 2 runs, struck out 7 at the time, and in what, 3 1/3 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's been very, very good. I think he's up by summertime. But Josh Smith, you got to keep an eye on him. His bat's woken up. He's playing some center field.
Yep.
Once a week. Bubba Thompson.
Everybody talks. What happened to his eye?
But people still talk about Josh Smith and Cole and Leote, but Bubba is off to as good a start as anybody. And so what's the deal with his eye?
Okay, so this happened. This happened night before last. He probably didn't play last night. He's probably out for a bit. Went for a foul ball down the line. Couldn't see what happened, but you can see the after effects. Josh Smith tweeted it out. His eye was swollen shut.
Oh, no.
Took a foul ball right off the corner of his eye. Swelled up his left eye. He was already open yesterday. The eye was opened, but they're obviously going to keep him out a couple of days. Get his. You want full vision out of your left eye, and it's not about losing vision because of an injury. It's because it's swollen. You just want that eye to go down a little bit.
Yeah.
He was aggressive, trying to get to a ball all the way down the line. He was in foul territory, and it just hit off his glove, I think, hit him in the eye, and they got him out of there. It was we'll have to find that picture and show it to you.
And we'll say this: left field is very. You talk to outfield, and they'll say left field is the hardest one.
Yep.
And Bubba's great at all of them, but he's a center fielder,
right?
And they're having to move around a little bit, so. And who knows with the wind and everything in Round Rock, it can get a little windy there. But we got to get Bubba on. That's another guy we got to get on. I love Bubba.
And his story
and everybody loves Bubba as like a teammate and a guy. He's so laid back.
He's friendly at spring training.
Yeah, he got drilled. I was watching a spring game and somebody smoked him good. Yeah. It was like live BP or something. And he took it off this, I don't know, let's say the hand, whatever it was. And the pitcher apologized, and Bubba goes, "No, man, it's baseball." He was just so laid back, and made the guy feel good because you can tell the guy was upset about it. I mean, he apologized, and you don't want to hit your own teammate, but Bubba was like, "Oh, you're good. It's baseball, man.
I got it, man. I got it."
So, but anyway, the overall picture, upper levels are winning, and that's good.
Yep.
Because that means that the prospects are playing well.
Yep.
And the guys that we talked about in the earlier segment about potentially coming up.
Yep.
It could happen.
Keep watching it. Watch what positions they do. Guys, we're going to end that thing right there. We'll be out at the ballpark. You'll be out this week. I'll be out there Friday night again. So give us a holler. Go and follow this. Subscribe to the YouTube page. Go to Rangers today. Sign up. $35 for the season if you want. 6 months right there. That's a deal right there. I imagine if you do it, you'll probably go ahead and re-up for the year and do it another year because we got some fun off-season
and
stuff.
It's gonna be a busy off-season.
Yep.
I know we're months and months away, but the Rangers are at the point now where they're going to be players in the off-season, and so year-round coverage.
We did it with a lockout.
A B writer doesn't stop. You know, I mean, just because the players stop Doesn't mean we do. Doesn't mean the executives stop making deals, and it's news to cover. So anyway, yeah, not to shill every damn time, but go subscribe.
Yep.
RangersToday.com.
And go hit the subscribe button here and give us a like. It helps us a lot. Guys, up until next time, we'll see you at the yard.